The following is a message from Christ Central Manchester, a church that meets in the heart of Manchester in the UK. To find out more about us, please visit www.christcentral.org.uk.
Just to say, my name's Keith, and I'm one of the pastors here at Christ Central. If you're a guest with us this morning, you are really warmly welcome. I hope you've received your bag of goodies and chocolate and that you've enjoyed the morning so far. This is a bit of a different morning for us, as I aim to just walk us through where we've got to in the last few months in terms of a vision process. I've got a number of people this morning just sort of saying, are you all right, Keith? Are you going to be all right this morning? People are really intrigued as to what's going to be unveiled this morning, and that's great. And I love the fact that there's so many of you are keen to see what God's got for us. Even just now, Naomi giving me a real encouragement for me that God's with me as we go through this together. But just wanted to say that normally we do go through, most Sundays, we go through a passage or a book of the Bible deliberately because we want to let the Bible speak for itself. And that's how we normally go about things. But this Sunday is a particularly different morning. Like I said, we're at the end of a few months of formation of a vision for the end of the year 2020. That's what we've had in mind. We're going to outline in this morning what we feel God has been guiding us in as a leadership team, as an eldership team, and as a church together, because we've tried as hard as we can, really, to give as many of you as possible an opportunity to speak into this process. But even as we look at this morning, I want us to start with the Bible. And I want us to start with Daniel chapter 2. And I want us to look at how important it is we are together in moments like these. And so if you have a Bible, please turn to Daniel chapter 2. And we'll read it in a few moments. It will be on the screen in a few moments. But before we get to just read it together, I want to explain that Daniel, you may know the story of Daniel, especially the story of Daniel in the lion's den. But this is just a couple of chapters before that. Daniel and his three friends, young guys from Judah, have been taken into exile into the land of Babylon. They're there because the foreign invading army has said, we want you. You're kind of young, strong, we think you're intelligent, we want to get the best of your nation and use it for our nation. That's why they're there. But whilst they're there, they have got this kind of sense in which they are going to do their best for that foreign country that they've been taken to. They're going to not kind of soil themselves, as it were. They're not going to give in to some of the sinful ways that they might meet. They're not going to compromise, but they are not at the same time going to sort of distance themselves and go into a ghetto and just kind of put up the walls. They're going to be there to bless, but at the same time stand firm and walk in their walks with God in a steadfast way. And so right away in chapter 1, we see them making a stand against the things that they could eat, that they shouldn't eat. They're seen to be, through that process, trustworthy and remarkable young men, and so they're given promotion into the king's service. And in chapter 2, they are faced with a crisis that we'll read about in a moment. King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and he wants the wise men of his land not just to interpret the dream, but he wants them to tell him what it actually was in the first place, which is kind of asking a great deal, let's put it mildly. No one, surprisingly, can do it. And so this is on kind of penalty of death. If no one comes up with this, all these wise men are going to be wiped out. And Daniel and his three friends are for some reason included in that bunch of people that are going to be killed. They're about to be executed along with all these other wise men. But Daniel, as he becomes aware of the threat to his life and his friends, as he becomes aware of the situation, we read the following. This is what happens. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 16. At this, Daniel went in to the king and asked for some time, so that he might interpret the dream for the king. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, "Praise be to the name of our God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king." This morning, the application for us, very briefly, before we crack on and look at the stuff that you're all here for, the application for this is important. This is a life and death situation with Daniel and his 3 friends. And make no mistake about it, we're in a life and death situation in the UK. We're in a life and death situation in Salford and Manchester. Lives are at stake. Maybe not ours. For those of us that know Jesus, we have this hope, and hope isn't like I hope to get a Ferrari next week. Hope is, in the Bible, much more definite than that. I have something very definite to look forward to, is what the biblical word hope means. And so, not so much our lives, but lives are at stake. This is a life and death situation for Daniel, for his 3 friends, for this group of wise men. And it's an opportunity for God to be glorified for Daniel and his 3 friends. That's how they saw it. So we could coast along. I've been in this church now for 3.5 years. Some of you have been in shorter time than that, some longer. We can coast along in church life and just let bygones be bygones, or just kind of let things pass us by, just kind of let it pass you by. Or we can take a moment, rather than just settling for nice, happy church, we can just take a moment and keep taking moments to seek his face, his will, and ask for his intervention. And that's what this is. This isn't standalone. We don't want to stop doing this. We want to keep doing this. But this is what this is. The heart behind what we've been doing over the last few months as we've pulled together where we feel God wants us to go for the next few years has been exactly that we might get his perspective on the next few years, not just carry on doing nice church together. And that isn't going to change. We're going to keep wanting to not just do nice church, but keep getting his perspective. But the first thing is, this is serious. The context we are in is effectively Babylon. We're in a foreign land. Whether you are British born and bred or not, you are in a foreign land. It says so in the book 1 Peter. We're all aliens. Some of us look more like aliens than others, but we're all aliens. We're all on a different planet. Some of us are from a different... Anyway, I'm not going to say that one. No, but in all seriousness, we are all foreigners here, and this is a life and death situation. Secondly, we are wanting to be God-focused. I've already gone there. We're not going to water down what we feel God's been speaking to us about. Not only do we keep wanting his perspective, but we're not going to hear his perspective and then go, "Oh, that's a little bit far-fetched. It's a little bit scary. Not going to quite go for that, God. Well, yeah, nice idea, Lord, but actually we'll just tailor that one to our context. We'll contextualize it, make it basically safer. We're not hopefully going to do that this morning. We're not going to water things down and make it safe. And what that means is, for this vision for the end of 2020 to come about, we really are going to need him, and not just doing nice church together. We're going to need him. So that's the second thing. It's very much God-focused. Daniel and his 3 friends took it to God and got from God the answer. And that's what we feel we've been trying to do. And then lastly, we really do need each other. This really rang out for me from this passage. There's a real sense of destiny, a real sense of the moment, of the hour, of the need of God, of desperate times. You know, our country is doing its best to go down the toilet as fast as it can. And we need God, and our country needs God. But in all of this, what does Daniel do when he's in a jam, when he's in a situation that's difficult, that's life-threatening? he goes and shares that crisis with his friends. And this morning, that's again our heart as an eldership team, as the leadership team of this church. Our heart is, and we're all here this morning, we want, as a leadership, to say we need all of you. It can't just be some nice ideas that I put up on the screen this morning and get excited about. It can't just be Keith and his little brainwaves. No, it can't even just be about the eldership team and our ideas. We need you. So as Daniel went to his friends, I'm coming to you this morning to say, friends, would you stand with us? Would you get behind this? You may not agree with might not cross every T and dot every I with us. You might not quite get every single part of what we're looking at, what we feel God's been saying, but would you still get behind this with us? Would you kind of put your backs to the plough, as it were? We really do need you. We can't do this on our own. So this morning I'm kind of bringing this crisis in our country, this crisis in Salford and Manchester, where people are hurting each other, people are being abused, people are going through life just despondent. Is there any point in all of this? And we have an answer. His name's Jesus, and we're unashamed about it. And if you're here this morning and you wouldn't call yourself a Christian in your own words, all that we are looking at this morning could come under the banner for us. Jesus is the way. Jesus is the truth. Jesus is the life. He is all that we are all about. And this is all that we are all about. And in the end, it's all about him. And so if anything comes across contrary to that, then ignore it. Because in the end, we want him to be glorified. And this is why we're going for it. We want his name more famous than it is at the moment. It isn't very famous, apart from as a swear word. We want his name famous for the glorious person that he is. And so we're bringing this to you this morning and saying, would you stand with us? Would you pray with us? Would you seek God? Would you get behind it in prayer, in action, in time, even in money? I'm not going to talk about that this morning, but it may come to that at some point. We're going to go for this, we're going to go for that. And without us all getting behind this, like I said, it will just be my nice ideas, it will just be some words on a screen or on a page. So I wanted to start there. Kind of get a bit of a perspective from a story in the book of Daniel where it was life and death. And there isn't really much of a difference now. It is life and death. And so with that in mind, let's go at what we've been looking at over the last couple of months. Because we have, as a church, been working through this process as a leadership, as a church. And so let's go for it and lift the lid on where we think and what we feel God is saying for the future. And I just want to re-emphasize that although this has been a process with some strategies and some deliberate, we've organized it in particular ways. You could say it's been organized. Yes, that's okay. Actually, what the heart behind it has been, God, what do you want to say? And to create some space and to create an opportunity for us to pray, hear God. And so we've had moments as a church where we've prayed together. We've had moments as a leadership team where we've prayed together and said, God, would you speak? Would you direct? And we feel we've got somewhere in all of this. We feel we've got somewhere in all of this. And this is important because many of you did write in with your different contributions and we wanted that. We feel like what we've put together is really a sense of where we feel we should be going and also some of the key themes that came through from the responses. Do you remember in the middle of the process we said, okay, well here's, in a moment I'm going to show you, just to recap, the prophetic themes from our history, the list of values we feel we have as a church, the flavours that we have as a church, and the purpose that we feel we're going for as a church. We put all that out to you all, and then we said, would you come back with what you feel the future should look like? And so, having done all of that, we felt like we then had a real sense of some key themes, and then we saw what resonated with us and what we felt God was saying to us as a leadership team, as well as what he was saying to you as individuals. And so let me just recap that, because that's important to start there. So before the summer, we put together some of this historical side of it. And we excuse me that it's escaped off the edge of the screen there. But we had some of these themes to start with from our prophetic history. We just kind of looked back, saw we felt at different times God was saying to us, at key moments, through different people, even one guy in Australia praying for us, somebody that we count as a good friend and trust That was a theme that you'll see in a moment. But we saw these kind of themes and we brought them together and said, this is where we feel God's been speaking. And these are actually things we feel that still are unfinished. We feel God's prophetically, and what we mean by prophetically is we feel God speaks to us as people and reveals things to us. That's what we mean by prophecy and the prophetic. And so this is some of our prophetic history. Not all of it, but we feel like the key stuff. So we see a release of gifts as a prophetic theme, creativity, the fact that God wants us to continue to be a resource base, that he would give us new strategies, new venues, new ways of doing things, that we would grow and see hundreds come to know him, more importantly than anything else. That there is this strong theme of the social action side of all that we are doing and want to continue to do with compassion for those who are marginalised. That there is to be a kind of cutting edge to what we are about. That came through in some of our prophetic history. That God wants to give us prominence, not for our glory, but for his. That he's taking us to the nations. That he wants us to not lose sight of the central Manchester geographic focus that we've had. And then we sent that out to you, if you remember, with this next statement as well. This is purpose statement. And the purpose statement reads like this: Christ Central Manchester exists to worship God, enjoy his presence in all of life, sharing that with others as we serve our city and resource churches worldwide. Just important to say that that's not a doctrinal statement. That will be something that is separate to this and very important, but that's not been really changed. It's not like we suddenly reviewed all our beliefs. What you've got with a purpose statement, if you imagine that we're on a bus, the difference between a vision statement that we're going to come to and a purpose statement that I've just read out, a purpose statement really says what a bus is. It's kind of got chairs for people to sit on, and it's got wheels and a steering wheel. That's kind of a purpose statement. So the purpose statement could be said of most churches, hopefully. Okay? Because most buses look the same or similar. A vision statement is what's on the front of the bus, and with each bus that will often usually be different. Where is this bus going? What is its destination? That's what we're going to get to in a moment, and from that we're going to have some objectives, ways in which we feel this is going to work out, and that's the stuff that you'll be suddenly want to wake up again. And we also, just very quickly, we sent out this list of values. This is, again, maybe the colour of our bus, what our bus feels like, whether we put really comfy chairs in or not. You know, this is the kind of feel of our bus in terms of the values that we hold and the flavours that we feel are important to us. So we are, as a community that seeks to follow Jesus, honour the Bible and be led by the Holy Spirit, Christ Central is to be hallmarked by being the following different flavours: compassionate, expressing mercy through social engagement; dependent, expecting great things from God; confident, attempting great things for God; equipped, developing maturity through teaching, discipling and sharing life; authentic, seeking to be open with each other and real; relational. That's a challenge for us in a city centre setting, to keep that high priority of relationship when it can feel like commuter church. Maybe come back to that a bit later. Creative, to keep expressing God-given imagination, innovation. Diverse, you know we love diversity here. We often talk about the number of nations among us. We want to reflect what's around us more and more. We believe God loves to reflect, to show his manifold, multifaceted wisdom through a diverse church, worldwide and also even local expressions of it. Accepting. Talked about it in the past. We want to be a church with an open door and open hearts to new people. That literally anyone. And I mean that kind of person that you think would struggle to fit in a church. We want that person to feel welcome. You know, Jesus went to the people that society didn't want to have anything to do with. That's what we are called to be about. And all of that is kind of our flavours, is what we're about, what we like to see more of. And now we come on to look at where we believe we should be going. So that's the bus and what it feels like, what a bus is. Now we look at where the bus is going. And this is our vision statement. This is our kind of headline vision statement. A city church at the heart of local communities. Let me just touch on this first before we get into the 6 different ways this is going to work out. Obviously, it's very difficult to put much more than 1 or 2 ideas on a 1-sentence vision statement. We understand that, and that's why that's just the nature of what it is. In a moment, you'll see how we feel this is going to be worked out. But one of the big themes that came through, one of the key themes that came through from many of you, and actually as we sat and prayed and kind of meditated on this, if you like, or kind of asked God about this, from this process, we felt some of the major theme was that there is this desire in all of us to reach out. Yeah, we feel called to the city centre of Manchester, but we see in us a desire to reach out, to spread out. Yesterday we went halfway up this tower next to us, Beaton Tower, to Cloud 23. Not as posh as I thought it would be, to be honest, but it was very nice. We went there with, it was my daughter's 13th, so it was just to celebrate that. That's what she wanted to do. So we had cream tea halfway up that tower. And you could see for miles. You know, we could see the airport. You could see north of the city, Salford. You could see the 2 football stadiums. You could see, which I won't mention. But you could see, you know, we were looking for the things that were important to us. Where's our house? You could see for miles, even on a slightly, it wasn't the clearest of days, but you could see for miles. And as we were worshipping this morning, I just felt, actually, even this word city, that it's a bit of an elephant in the room, if we're honest. Because what on earth does city mean when some of us live in Stockport, some of us live in Salford, some of us live in Manchester, some of us live in Wythenshawe, Altrincham. You know, some of us are loosely in Greater Manchester. Some of us are very much definitely in Manchester. Some of us are definitely not in Manchester and definitely are in Salford. Just as an example, it's important we touch on it. What does the word city mean? Can I stress the city means what you want it to mean? I mean that. City means if you're in Salford, you're in the city of Salford. If you feel you're in Greater Manchester, that's your city. If you feel you're in Manchester and you don't like people that think they are in Manchester because they live in Wilmslow, but think they live in Manchester, well, let them think what they think. You know the truth. I don't, in your mind, I don't live in Manchester either. Right? But I think each to their own on this one. And we couldn't come up with a better phrase than the word city. Well, I mean, that's a word. We tried to come up with another word. You can't. So we tried to come up with phrases. It gets very long, this vision statement. And so does the purpose statement. It gets even longer. You know, all the boroughs and towns and cities that make up the region known as Greater Manchester or just slightly bigger than. So we settle for city. Everyone happy? Even if you're not, it's not changing. I'm glad we're laughing. I had, premonitions or worries that it wouldn't be. Something to laugh about. But it is an interesting one. And do you know what actually I felt, and coming back to the Beaton Tower, as we were worshipping, I thought, the word city means whatever we feel God's given us to go for. And as you're stood in the not even all the way, as Ethan said to me this morning, we weren't even all the way at the top. If just halfway up, you can see so much. Almost whatever you can see, I mean, physically see, geographically, but also what you feel God is saying. And so this will become important in a moment, as you'll see, because we are going to be stretching out a bit now. We're not going to lose a focus on the centre, but we are going to be stretching out. Whatever we feel we can see. So if we suddenly see Crewe, all right, and I'm serious, if we suddenly decide we've got a group that want to plant a church in Crewe or Rochdale or further north, then that's our city. That's what God's got for us, okay? Does that make sense? Now, I know it's It probably isn't politically correct. It probably isn't that. We won't go bang on about this in public, but it's something we can own and say, yeah, this is, as a church, this is what we feel God's given us. This is what we can see. Okay? Enough said. Because the other part of this vision statement is not just that we would spread out, but that we really felt, and we kept hearing it, kept feeling it, that not only would we reach out in some superficial way, but we'd reach out in a real way, and that we would have local expressions of who we are, not just meet in the middle of it all and ask everybody to keep shipping in and bussing in, but actually to begin to spread out and actually be expressed, as it were, locally as well as centrally. And that's very important. And that's just kept coming. Even the way we've been doing things in recent years, actually, has been trying to do something to enact that. There's a heart among us to do that more and more. And so here we really get into the nitty-gritty of the 6 different ways we feel that one line is to be worked out. You say, how on earth do they get 6 different things from that? Well, here we go. First of all, life in the Spirit. Now, this could be seen as a value. It could actually be seen as doctrine, that we would prize the Holy Spirit. But actually, we feel there is so much more for us to go for in the wonderful person of the Holy Spirit. We feel there is so much more for him, for us to have in him and to go for. And so we want to look at the end of December 2020, we want to be able to celebrate lots and lots of salvation stories, of healing. We want to celebrate you and I, not just on a Sunday morning, not just at an Alpha course, not just at a particular meeting, but out on the streets when we're sort of giving food out to the homeless, or when we're looking after food bank clients, or when you are in your workplace praying for somebody and seeing them healed. We want to see more of that. We haven't seen hardly any of that. We're aware of it and we want it. We see it and we want more of it. And I feel that's something no one's going to say, oh, I can't believe they've got that. They want to see more healing. And not only that, we want to, how we're going to record this, I have no idea, but our heart is this, that we would, over the next, whatever it is, 4 years, by the end of 2020, rather than saying 4 years, because it can become a rolling 4 years, we're going to stick to the end of 2020. We want to see, or have heard about the fact that 1,000 people, through us, have actually heard a pretty full explanation of the gospel. So this isn't just praying for healing, it's having a moment where the conversation opens up and somebody says, either, how can I be saved? Or, what is it you believe? And you get the opportunity to share the whole gospel with them. We're not saying we're going to see 1,000 people come to know Jesus. Obviously, we'd love that. But to say, actually, we're going to go for this. And if we have targets like this in mind, it will keep us pushing. It will keep us asking, seeking God, rather than, again, doing nice church and just coasting. We feel like, yeah, let's set this up. Exactly again, how we're going to record this, we don't know. Somebody will be in charge of that. It won't be me. Keeping a record of that. Second objective is growth. Now, this can get misconstrued, misinterpreted. We are not about numbers. We're just about more people coming to know Jesus. And the more people that know Jesus, the more people that are likely to find out about him. So the bigger we are, the more effect we are likely to have. So we would love to see us grow. We're about 150. There's probably about 150 even with children here this morning. On paper, we're a bit bigger than that, but we're probably about 160, 170. We would love to grow to 300. Now, again, we want to see some people come to know Jesus for the first time. And so we're going to say in that extra 150 or so, would 50 be brand new baby Christians that have never known Jesus before come to know him. You might think, where's the other 100 coming from? What are you on about? We're just saying that as we spread out, as we'll see in a moment, we're hoping, we're praying, God, would you add some people to us that would give us even more effect? People that are coming into the city for jobs, for study, would you add them to us? And you might think this is a bit of a strange thing to be going for, but actually, again, it's just something for us to aim for. In a church like ours, in a city like ours, people come and go. So this church looks very different from how it did a year ago. People have gone for good reasons to other parts of the UK or other parts of the world, and people have joined us from elsewhere. And so we kind of just want to see this grow. We'd love to see this place more and more full, that we would then affect more and more people. And here we come to the bit that you're probably going to sit up most for. And this is how we work this out in terms of spreading out and this locations side of things. So we're going for some different locations, and let me just read this out to you. I said Wilmslow earlier, so I got it in there quick. Bear with me whilst I explain this. 4 local hubs, Wilmslow, Salford, Manchester City Centre and South Manchester, that will facilitate community, discipleship, prayer and outreach on a local level and provide the foundation for 3 or 4 Sunday meetings across the city by December 2020. Let me explain what some of these words mean. We're in a postmodern or a post-postmodern era where words come in and it's important we all understand what I mean by the words. Otherwise we'll all go over different... Oh, Keith said we're going to start a zoo. Maybe not. The word hub is effectively where we have community groups that meet weekly, small groups. Well, when you've got a couple of those quite close to each other, I'd say that's beginning to become a hub. It's not just one small group anymore, it's a couple of small groups, and they're beginning to even do things together. There's maybe 20, 30 of them, and they're beginning to just impact the community. They may be even reaching out in some way, social action, with social action, but they're at least praying together, meeting together, and beginning to reach out and have a local effect. That's a hub, and we've got that in different levels already in some of these places. Then we've got the word site, which is where that hub of a couple of community groups sees even more happening, becomes even more organised, gets even bigger, and even begins to think about and actually puts together a Sunday meeting. Might not be Sunday morning, but probably Sunday, because that's when most people that don't know Jesus expect churches to meet, and therefore it makes sense to stick to the script. But that's when a hub goes into becoming a site, when it's got kind of more impact, more weight, more numbers, and begins to even think about meeting on a Sunday morning. And then the word church plant. So up until that point, these hubs and sites are very much linked in to the kind of mother base, as it were, to the sending base. And so for us, it would be that people would, still be a sense of us really being together. A church plant then goes out on its own a little bit more, has its own leadership or eldership team, has its own kind of legal, financial governance, that sort of things. And you bless them and you say, yeah, go for it. It makes more sense that you go it alone. And we see church planting, throughout the New Testament. Let me just explain the areas that I've mentioned. The one that's different from most of us is the one Wilmslow. Dan and Esther Garbutt, who just sat here, joined us recently, and with our blessing, we've known about their desire to plant a church into that area, south of Manchester. They've wanted to do that for a couple of years. When they joined us, we knew that was what they were kind of bringing to the table, as it were. And rather than sort of saying, well, maybe one day we'll cut you loose and you can go it alone. Actually, no, we've wanted to bring them in and say, could we get behind you with this? Would you give us, as a church, the privilege of partnering with you as you go ahead? We're just trying to move house at the moment. That's hopefully going to go through in the next couple of weeks. They'll hopefully be in that house in the area of Wilmslow, just next door in that place called Hanforth, and they will be there hopefully by Christmas, and into the new year begin to put a small group together. It will be, unless God brings revival, it might take several months. It might take a year or two for them to really get established. And that's fine. We want them to just go for it, gather. Their heart is to be very relational in how they do it. Gather those, it's not all posh. There are bits of Wilmslow that it does sound like a cushy number, but in some ways it isn't. Because although, like I said, it isn't all that people drive 4x4s. having said that, because so many people are well off, it's a tough place to plant a church because no one needs God, so they think. They're all very healthy. They don't need a doctor. Thank you very much. And so it's a tough place to plant a church in many ways. And so we just want to partner with them and get behind them. That's what's going on there. We hope, Lord willing, God, please, would you do it, will go from being a small group to a hub to a site and potentially a church plant. You know, if they want to do that, we're happy to say go for it. We're not going to try and define it now. We're talking about, at least a couple of years away, probably. And then the other areas that I mentioned, these three other areas, Salford, Manchester City Centre and South Manchester, we kind of carry on as we are, but not just as we are. We want to see Salford become even more of a hub. It is a hub for us already in a way that Wilmslow obviously isn't. It's just the 5 of them with the 3 kids. Salford, we've got lots of people who want to reach that area. Now, they already are a hub. We're talking about, we're being open to the idea of them one day having a Sunday morning, and even by having a Sunday morning, you get more of an opportunity to invite people that are local. Does that make sense? It's hard work, you know this, and this is something that I think we're touching on with this. It's hard work if you live in Salford to say, come along to the Comedy Store. Where's the Comedy Store? Over the border? Which border? You know that border. It's hard. It's hard for where I live. It's hard to say, would you come into the Comedy Store? I'm thinking of my neighbours. It's like, what are you on about? Coming all the way. Now, for some people, that's normal. They happily gravitate to the city centre, but not for everybody. And so to release hubs into different areas, including South Manchester, exactly how that's going to work, we don't know, but to say, let's go for it. And so even at the moment, there is plans for a Salford-based Alpha course in the new year. And Dave Atkinson, one of the elders, and Joe Atkinson, and the guys there are kind of putting together events before Christmas leading to an Alpha in the new year. That's part of being a hub. And that's part of it. That's what we want that to look like elsewhere. Now, there will be questions about timing, about exactly what the goals are. Are you saying we're going to end up with 4 Sunday different meetings by the end of 2020? Do you know, if we did, it would be fantastic because we would have grown a lot to make that happen. We are not going to do it unless we can do it without killing the other bits. Does that make sense? Social action is important as well to realise. If we're going to suddenly start doing more social action, maybe starting food banks in other parts of, or in other areas that we've mentioned, we've got to time that well so that we don't kill the work that we value and love to do in Salford. The Salford Food Bank, if we suddenly killed it because we started too many other things at the same time, and there's a lot of people coming in, many of you live in south of Manchester, are coming in to help bless and support that work. So we won't do that too early. We won't suddenly start a Sunday meeting in Salford too early so that we end up with 3 people left here in the city centre Comedy Store. No, we're just not going to be that daft about it, and we're not going to have all the answers necessarily today. We're not even going to have all the detail. We've not even assigned people to look after these different 6 objectives, although we will. That is the plan. Each objective will have like a captain, for want of a better word, somebody that will lead that and keep us on track. So we'll get onto that in the coming weeks. But for this morning, I just want to throw the headlines out there and for you to hear it and for you to stand with us in it. Moving on to social action as another objective. We're not going to stop. In fact, as I've said or intimated already, we want these different areas to begin to reach out in that way. What that looks like in Wilmslow will be different to how it looks in Broughton at the moment, in Salford. But we want to see that multiplied, not just held in one area. We feel God's speaking to us about looking out over the whole thing and expressing what we've already been doing, but again and again in different areas. I think this is number 5. We want to continue to resource churches. We want to... thank you. we've been about that. We've been about that in many different ways. One key way we're about that is with Jeremy and Anne. And Jeremy Simpkins, one of our elders who looks after the Christ Central Church's sphere that we are a part of, which is part of New Frontiers. And the 100 or so churches that he's responsible for, we want to continue to kind of work together and support all of that as much as we can. But then there is so much else going on as well. So many of you travelling all over the world, all over the UK, and supporting not just churches, but different God initiatives. And we want to continue to be resourcing all those things as much as we can. I mean, we talk about this all the time. We punch, I don't know if you know this, but for the size of church we are, we punch well above our weight in social action and in resourcing other churches. It's exhausting. It's just, there's so much going on. It's good, but it's just frenetic. You know, we're not going to stop. We're not going to cease to do that. But we do want to say that we're going to focus particularly and partner particularly with Joseph and Lily Mwila, who have been here before from Zambia and spoken. We want to continue to support them in particular. Well, I haven't mentioned it yet already, but we want to increase our giving to Christ Central churches. I think we already give 5 or 6%. We want to increase that to 10% by the end of 2020. We want to continue to resource other churches in the UK and overseas. So Graham and Daryl Anns, they do a lot of travelling in the UK and overseas, but in the UK in particular, supporting other churches in various different ways. And so they're often not here on a Sunday because they're speaking at other churches. So we're going to keep doing all of that. But like I said, the Zambia connection is strong for us, and we want to focus in on that. You can't necessarily do everything. We'd love to, but you can't do everything. And we're going to focus particularly on that. And that will mean increased individual support for this child sponsorship program that they have in Kitwe in Zambia, to double that by the end of 2020. I think there's about 15 or so, maybe not as many as that, but there's a handful of us at the moment that support that and sponsor a child. And then another part of resourcing churches, in particular Zambia, is to send over 10 people on a Go Zambia team or an equivalent team, because a Go Zambia team is probably targeting younger people. We want to send people on that kind of team and also other teams. And so people have already gone from here. Andy and Anne recently went and were involved in working there and supporting them over in Kitwe again. We want to sponsor more leaders over in Zambia. These leaders, they cost about £300 a year to train. Some of them are walking 6 miles across desert, getting a bus. 6 hours across desert, getting a bus, and then walking again for hours to get to training. We just think if we can support some more of them, I think we sponsor one at the moment. Costs us £300 a year. We'd love to sponsor more. And then lastly, 120 of us to get to devoted. Now this might seem bizarre. You basically want to up our numbers at a camp. No, if there's 120 of us at devoted rather than the sort of 60 or 70 that we currently have, it says something about us getting behind all that I've just talked about. It says something about how we really are heart and soul in with this kind of global mission, this sphere that's reaching different parts of the world. And to see more and more of us get together, not only does it do us good, but it means we're saying, yeah, we're part of this. And so we want to see our numbers going to devoted increase. And then lastly, training. If we're going to do all of these things, it became very clear to us we're going to need to train some people. And I am going to focus on training within church, but it doesn't just mean training within church. We want to see some training programs, as I mentioned at the end of this, that is for all of life. But we realise that over these next couple of years, if we're going to see people leading hubs, sites, whatever they become, that we're going to need more elders, more paid staff, which again brings in the whole area of finance. We're going to need more ministry team leaders. We're going to need a wider leadership that can really carry weight. We're going to need leadership teams for these hubs and sites. We're going to need to increase our youth and student work and therefore train student and youth leaders. We're going to need to have people that are looking out for our outreach and how are we actually doing in these different areas. We're going to need to send people on training schools that already exist, like the Christ Central School of Leadership that takes place in Sheffield. I had the privilege of being there on Friday and speaking to them for the day. And there's about 40 of them. We'd love to see some more of us go there. We've got 2 people there already, Avril and Josh. Amory did it last couple of years, and Avril and Josh are doing it at the moment. And I think it's doing them good. We want to see more people trained up. Lastly, we want to put on more programs here as a church that help you in various ways. We do it a little bit already, but we want to just see more. We want to see, you guys that are in the medical professions getting together and helping each other in how to live it out in that sphere of influence, as it were. We want to see other areas of training. We want to see, how do you start a business? How do you bring up toddlers? How do you stay married and keep it healthy? How do you handle being single? Whatever it might be, practical. But as well as that, we want to maybe even put together some theological training for those that would want to delve deeper into doctrine and into the Bible. So it would be all of that. We haven't put a target on that, a bit dangerous, but we want to see an increase in training programs and an increase in training generally. In conclusion, you'll be glad to hear, maybe, as with Daniel, action was needed. We will appoint individuals, as I've said already, to carry each objective and to keep us on track. But as with Daniel, this can't just be a nice idea. There are lives at stake. There is a nation at stake. There is a city, at least 3 of them, at stake. I'm saying Salford, Manchester and Greater Manchester. There's at least 3 at stake. And we appreciate there might be different reactions to all that's been said this morning. But what I don't want, and what Daniel would not have appreciated from his 3 friends, is, guys, we're about to die. Oh, okay, Daniel. That's nice. You woke me up. You sort it out then, Daniel. That's a nice vision. You sort that out. I'd rather have outrage than apathy. I'd rather somebody come up to me angry that I'd said something wrong than, oh, that's nice. We really, really want you to stand with us. And so could I encourage you on your Connect cards this morning just to write down your kind of one-line instant reaction to this. You don't need to put lots of detail unless you really want to, but you've only got so much space. Please do confine it to a Connect card. But if you just want to put, this is rubbish, this is great, whatever kind of instant kind of thought comes to mind, that would be really helpful for us. If you're a guest with us, this may have been a bit different for you in many ways this morning. We'd love you just to fill out the Connect card, because we just want to hear from you. If you want us to let you know about things that are happening, maybe you want to sign up for anything that you've heard about this morning. The buckets will go round actually just now as the band are coming up. If the buckets could go around now, that'd be really helpful. Welcome team. And if the band could come up as well. We'll give the opportunity in community groups this week just to talk this through. I've kind of put together some provocative questions just to stir and stimulate conversation in your small groups, in our community groups. I'd love it if you would just, when you finish writing down what you feel you need to write, just if you would stand with us. Let's be a kind of standing together as a church in this. If you are a guest with us this morning and you wouldn't call yourself a Christian, this isn't us trying to be trendy and all kind of skillful in the whole area of management or whatever. And our heart really, unashamedly, even with some of the numbers that you've heard, you might think, why are they trying to see more and more people become Christians? Well, the root of it is that we believe he's amazing. We really do. None of this is so that we can have a better name or become more important or have more of a voice. If we do get any of those things, it's so that his name is seen louder, is seen bigger and heard louder. That's what we're about this morning. So we're unashamed. If you don't know Jesus this morning, we think you would do well to come to know him, to put it mildly. And we think the whole of Greater Manchester would do well, and Salford and Manchester would do well to hear him and know him.